What's up guys, Red Wing here, and welcome to another video. So this video was a request from someone that's been on the list for a while, but today's video will be the long-awaited story of what if Anakin and Padme were a dyad in the Force. For those of you who don't know what a Force dyad is, it is a Force bond between two Force-sensitive beings, which can allow them to share each other's thoughts, emotions, and even heal or revive the other. Without further ado, let's begin with today's story. Our story begins on a Republic gunship after Padme had just fallen out and just after Anakin and Obi-Wan had just argued about personal feelings. In this story, we're going to assume that Padme was actually Force sensitive, but that her parents refused to surrender her over to the Jedi, just as Palpatine's parents had done with him in the Plagueis novel. So, as soon as Anakin and Obi-Wan reach Dooku, Anakin sees Padme behind Dooku. Anakin, thinking that Dooku had somehow kidnapped Padme, was even more angered at the Count and rushed him almost immediately, with Obi-Wan ordering for Anakin to stop. However, just like the original timeline, Dooku uses Force Lightning to knock Anakin out, and a duel between Obi-Wan and Dooku begins. However, this time, Anakin is able to get up earlier than he had in the original timeline, and he is able to stop Dooku from injuring Obi-Wan. The two Jedi then duel Dooku together. However, Anakin is knocked out of the battle once again when Dooku injures his leg, and Anakin throws Obi-Wan his lightsaber. So instead of Anakin being the one to dual wield against Dooku as he had in the original timeline, Obi-Wan is the one to use two weapons against the Sith Lord. At this point in the timeline, Anakin was a very powerful warrior at best, but he was not yet experienced enough so as to best the likes of Dooku. Obi-Wan, being Anakin's teacher and being much more experienced than the young Padawan, is able to last much longer against the Count, and when Dooku destroys one of Obi-Wan's weapons, Yoda enters the fight, and Dooku has a much harder time against the Jedi. He would ultimately attempt to escape. However, the clones then arrive just as Dooku attempts to get into his ship, and they throw thermal detonators at the ship, causing it to explode as Dooku was attempting to get inside, severely injuring him. Yoda would be somewhat relieved that Dooku was alive, and he ordered that a medical capsule be brought for Dooku so that medical treatment could be provided. The clones are hesitant, but under the control of the inhibitor chips, they would obey Yoda's orders, and Dooku is taken to the best Republic facility on Coruscant, where he would stand trial for his crimes upon his recovery. The Clone Wars would continue despite Dooku's condition, and Anakin would still marry Padme in secret. After this, though, he would visit Dooku in the medical facility after having constructed his famous lightsaber, wanting to kill Dooku as he lay there comatose. However, before he ignites his new weapon, Padme's voice suddenly echoed in Anakin's mind, crying for Anakin to stop. Anakin does so, stunned by what he had just heard. Then Padme speaks again, only this time, it's as if she's really there with him. Anakin turns around, and he sees her, simply standing there. And Anakin is flabbergasted by what is going on. Padme was still on Naboo, so how could she be here now, Anakin wondered. This was impossible. It was then that Padme would inform Anakin of her Force sensitivity, as she would somehow deduce that the Force had something to do with this. Anakin would agree with Padme's deduction, and he would agree to teach her a few tricks in secret so as to learn how to better defend herself. After this, Anakin would go to the Jedi Temple, where he would be assigned the 501st. The Clone Wars would largely continue the same way, except with Dooku recovering from his injuries and with Anakin teaching Padme the basics of the Force, while also learning to master his newfound connection with her. They would be able to know what the other was thinking, share their emotions from across the galaxy, and they would always know where the other person was. The point where Anakin takes Ahsoka as his apprentice is where things take a big turn. Jabba's son, Rada the Hutt, would be kidnapped by the Separatists on orders from Darth Sidious. However, when Padme is assigned to prove Anakin's innocence, the Separatists would suddenly attack Coruscant, and Padme, while the Republic scrambles to put up a good defense, would contact Anakin via their connection in the Force. Anakin and Ahsoka had been able to retrieve the young Hutt, and are able to return him to Jabba, and they attempt to contact Coruscant, but this is when Padme contacts him and says that Coruscant is under attack. Anakin would hear this, and he would deduce that the Separatists were here to rescue Dooku, and that kidnapping Jabba's son was merely a distraction so as to get Anakin off-world. Anakin thanks Padme, and the Jedi leave Jabba's palace after gaining the Hutt's allegiance. Even though Ahsoka is unfamiliar with Anakin and Padme's connection, Ahsoka notices something very, very different in her master. The Separatist strike is ruthless and deadly, heading directly towards the Republic medical facility holding Dooku. Yoda leads the defense, flanked by Masters Mace Windu and Shaak Ti. Blaster fire rains down as Coruscant skies burn, but the Jedi hold firm as the attack continues. Padme, having remained in the Senate to aid coordination efforts, feels Anakin's drawing nearer even as she pushes back against a squad of B-2 super battle droids with little more than instinct and newfound strength in the Force. Anakin's ship lands on Coruscant just as the Separatists reach Dooku's chamber. The comatose Sith Lord lies unaware of the chaos around him as Magna Guards clear the path. But before they can extract Dooku, Anakin crashes through the corridor, slicing droids down with ease. Ahsoka, meanwhile, defends the wounded clones, whilst Rex fights alongside Anakin. Then, Padme arrives, but not through the corridor, not by ship either. But in a moment of pure instinct, she appears through use of the Force. Across the battlefield, Padme stares blankly ahead in the Senate chamber, her body unmoving, while her mind and essence fight alongside her husband, and together they stop the Separatists from retrieving Dooku, although the room seems to warp around them. Across the planet, Yoda feels the bond between Anakin and Padme, which is something that hasn't been seen in generations, and later, as Dooku is moved under heavier guard and the Separatist retreat is confirmed, Yoda calls for Anakin for a private audience. He comments that Anakin's bond with Padme has become powerful, and when he peers into Anakin's eyes, he deduces that the connection was in fact a Force dyad. Anakin asks Yoda more about the dyad, surprised that Yoda had even heard of this, and Yoda says that while the dyad was powerful, it was possibly very, very dangerous. Anakin says nothing, thinking only of Padme, the way they fought together, and how complete he felt. Yoda watches him carefully, telling Anakin to protect Padme, but asks him, at what cost? In the Chancellor's office, Darth Sidious seethes with rage. Dooku was nearly lost, and more importantly, a dyad in the Force had revealed itself. Sidious gazes out at the fires of war from his high tower on Coruscant. He had manipulated Dooku and had been working to lure Anakin, but this was very, very new to him. The Force dyad was a power that he hadn't accounted for at all, and something that he never, ever expected. However, Sidious would think to himself, and he would realize that the dyad could be twisted for his own sinister purposes. The Jedi Council, unsettled by the events on Coruscant, later convenes in secret. Yoda had kept the details of the dyad vague to the others, but whispers had already spread of how Anakin Skywalker had fought with a strength never seen before, and how Padme Amidala, a senator with no Jedi training, had somehow appeared in the middle of a battle. Mace Windu was the first to speak plainly, telling the Council that Anakin had become too powerful, and that if the Force bonded him to Padme, then the Jedi may have lost control of him already. Obi-Wan immediately defends his former Padawan. He explains that Anakin is a loyal and good man. He says that the war has hardened Anakin, but that he doesn't believe it was darkness. He believes that it was something purer than even the darkness itself, as he had felt the bond that was between Anakin and Padme. Yoda listens in silence, tapping his walking stick. Yoda says that while the connection may be pure, that passion may linger, that attachment may develop as a result of said passion, and through attachment, fear may soon rise. The Council remembers Qui-Gon and his warnings about the Force. As a result, the Council begins to wonder if they were seeing the very phenomenon that Qui-Gon had warned about, the Force choosing its own path outside of the control of the Jedi Council. Padme and Anakin would reunite on Naboo. Anakin, restless after the battle, goes to a place that he had seen only in his dreams, and Padme followed. Anakin's dreams were actually visions of a place deep beneath the lakes of Naboo. They journeyed to the depths together, guided only by the Force. What they find shocks husband and wife. It was a temple, deep underwater, like the Gungan city. It was buried under centuries of silt and coral, overgrown by nature, but unmistakably shaped by ancient hands. Inscriptions on the wall depict a man and a woman, hands bound by tendrils of light and shadow, locked in both embrace and struggle. The text is fragmented, but Anakin reads the meaning easily through the Force, and he explains that they were the first DYAD. They weren't Jedi, they weren't Sith. Rather, they were one. Padme steps forward and deduces that something tore the man and woman apart. A sudden rush of darkness crashes through them both, and they stumble back, their breath having been knocked out of them. Anakin deduces that this was a warning, not from the temple, but from the Force itself. They aren't just bound to each other. They were dangerous to the balance that the Force so desperately needed. Palpatine, meanwhile, watches the reports with cold calculation. He now knows that the prophecy of the Chosen One is real, but that it was never meant to be fulfilled by Anakin alone. The DYAD, Palpatine figures out, makes Anakin something more than the Chosen One. It makes him one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, unless, of course, Palpatine would gain control over both Anakin and Padme. He begins engineering subtle moves, and he uses his position to push Padme into higher authority in the Senate, and, quietly, he increases surveillance around her residence. At the same time, Palpatine continues to manipulate Anakin just as he had in the original timeline, and the Clone Wars go very much the same way as the original timeline does after this point. The main difference was that Ahsoka actually stayed in the Jedi Order due to Anakin and Padme's efforts in helping her prove her innocence, and Anakin becoming a Jedi Master as a result. But once we get to Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine's approach soon changes. Padme becomes pregnant, and at this point in the timeline, Anakin and Padme feel everything. Each other's joy, pain, desire, and fear so strongly that their bond has become both their greatest strength and deepest vulnerability. Then, Anakin has another vision, the visions of Padme dying in childbirth. His hand was outstretched, too late to save her. The Force was silent and did nothing. Padme felt it too, and woke up in a cold sweat, her own body aching as if it were happening in the now. They sit in silence together, both realizing the same terrible thing, that it was a future, a possible future, shown to them by the Force itself. Anakin then begins to wonder, if the Force had bound them together, could it also be the one to tear them apart? So, Palpatine would still offer power to Anakin, but this time, he would speak a little more about Padme's safety, and Palpatine would place Anakin on the council, knowing that the Jedi would do something to infuriate him. This goes in the same way as it does in the original timeline, but since Anakin was already a master, he would be fine with this. However, when Anakin is given his assignment to spy on Palpatine, he refuses to go along with it. Meanwhile, Padme would return to Naboo after having the vision, and she no longer trusts the Force as a result of this. The DYAD had once made her feel invincible, but now it simply feels like a trap. Padme, though, begins to feel whispers from the Naboo temple as if it was calling to her. Padme returns to the underwater ruins alone late that night, drawn by an inexplainable pull, and she finds a sealed chamber beneath the temple altar. Using the Force instinctively, she opens it. Inside, resting on bone-colored stone, lies a Sith holocron. She hears a voice come from the holocron, and Padme recoils as the holocron begins to show her visions, possibilities where she takes control, where the Jedi fall into arrogance and blindness, where the Sith are not the true enemy, where balance comes not from denying passion, but mastering it. Slightly curious, she leaves the temple with the holocron hidden in her cloak. Anakin, after refusing to spy on Palpatine, grows restless. He trains harder, pushing his body and his mind further, desperately trying to master any Force ability he could find in the Jedi archives before the birth of his child. Ahsoka, having just returned from capturing Maul a lot earlier in this timeline, would begin to notice her master's instability, as he walks with a fury beneath his calm, and his bond with Padme is no longer subtle. It's blinding to anyone attuned to the Force. During a meeting with Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, Ahsoka accidentally catches a glimpse of Padme through the Force, a flash of crimson light surrounding her, a vision of Padme holding a red lightsaber standing over the fallen body of Anakin. Shaken by this, Ahsoka confides in Obi-Wan and tells him everything. Obi-Wan, who was about to leave for Utapau to destroy Grievous, remains silent, his face haunted by Ahsoka's words as he tells her that he honestly is not sure as to what to do about the situation. Yoda senses the growing storm during the Battle of Kashyyyk and calls an emergency council meeting to discuss this without Anakin's presence. He warns the council that the Dyad's emergence is accelerating the prophecy. Some begin to suggest that Padme and Anakin be exiled from the Republic, or worse. But Windu proposes a darker idea. He proposes that they sever the Dyad by use of the Force. He explains that there was an ancient ritual designed to break Force links between two beings that was both rare and dangerous. It was irreversible and not without risk. The last time it was attempted, it killed both participants. Both Yoda and Obi-Wan instantly refuse to go through with this, but Windu and Ki-Adi-Mundi make plans. Padme, meanwhile, activates the Sith holocron. This time she listens. The holocron, in short, tells her that the Force created their bond to bring balance, not obedience to lesser beings. As the holocron fades, Padme rises, her eyes burning with resolve. She no longer wants to be protected, she wants to understand the Force better. She wants to control her destiny, and she will not die in childbirth. Anakin, still at the Jedi Temple, is summoned by the Council to a council meeting, and they confront him out of fear. Windu tells him plainly that the Council was thinking about severing the bond between him and Padme. Anakin is stunned by this, but then he is angry as he storms out, feeling as if Windu was attempting to save Padme by killing the best part of him. As Anakin leaves, Yoda on hologram calls to him, telling him that if he continues down this path, it would dominate his destiny forever. Anakin stops before angrily saying the words, "Then maybe it should." Padme, meanwhile, receives an unexpected invitation to have a private audience with Chancellor Palpatine. She leaves Naboo immediately, and when she arrives in Palpatine's private chambers, the city flickers beneath them like fireflies under glass. Sidious, cloaked in the warmth of the Republic's most trusted figure, greets her with gentle formality, before telling her that they needed to discuss her connection with a certain Jedi. Padme barely hides her surprise, but then Palpatine, pretending to care, tells her that the Jedi Council sees her and Anakin as a liability, but that he sees potential. He then asks Padme if she really believes that the dyad was formed by chance. Padme's heart skips as she feels the dyad tighten like a knot in her chest. Anakin senses her fear at the Jedi Temple and reaches for her mind, asking her what is happening. Palpatine tells her to let him listen in, as he then reveals it all. That he manipulated the war, not just to gain power, but to mold the Chosen One, and that Padme was the key to doing so. The Sith prophecy of the dyad, Palpatine told her, long buried, spoke of two beings bound by the Force as one. Together, Padme and Anakin could unlock the ultimate power. The power to reshape life and control life and death. Palpatine asks Padme to join him under the guise that Anakin and Padme would bring true peace to the galaxy on their terms. Padme stares at him for a moment. Her fingers brush the hidden Sith holocron in her cloak. Her mind screams for Anakin, but she doesn't answer, telling Palpatine that she needs to think. Anakin, having heard everything from the Jedi Temple, demands to speak with the Council. The Council would believe that Anakin had come to his senses, but their belief soon turned to fear, as Anakin revealed that Palpatine was the Sith Lord they had been looking for. Mace Windu's expression hardened, his gaze shifting to the other Jedi Masters. Yoda, again present via hologram, closed his eyes, telling the Masters that he planned on returning to Coruscant immediately. Anakin, already burning with the strain of his bond to Padme, takes a step forward and boldly explains that Palpatine is with her right now. Mace turns to Kit Fisto, Aegon Kolar, and Saesee Tiin, saying that they would go. Yoda shakes his head. He tells the Masters to wait, including Anakin. Anakin snaps, his voice sharp and breaking as he says the word no. He tells the Masters that Padme was in danger and that he could feel it. Yoda's eyes narrow, trying to convince Anakin to stay. But Anakin is already gone. Palpatine stands near the window as he continues to speak with Padme. Padme's fingers twitch towards the Sith holocron beneath her robes, but she doesn't yet activate it. Instead, she censors herself and activates a blue lightsaber that she had constructed herself, ready for the moment that Anakin reaches her. And then it happened. The glass behind Palpatine explodes inward as Anakin crashes into the office, saber blazing, rage pouring off of him in waves as he screamed at Sidious to step away from his wife. Palpatine steps back, casting aside his facade before he unleashes a torrent of lightning, but the lightning never lands. A golden glow envelops Padme as she lifts her hand, absorbing the attack with raw Force energy. Her eyes shimmer faintly with something neither fully light nor dark. Palpatine steps back, truly caught off guard for the first time in years. The dyad wasn't just power, Palpatine realized. It was balance. Anakin and Padme step forward, side by side, lightsabers ignited, the Force swirling around them like a storm. The duel is ferocious. Sidious is a whirlwind of blue lightning and flickering shadow, but the dyad is united. Anakin's aggression is focused, tempered by Padme's calm. Padme's clarity is emboldened by Anakin's strength. Together, they quickly overwhelm the Dark Lord. Palpatine stumbles. Anakin prepares the final blow, but hesitates. He sees his vision again, Padme dying. His fear coils in his throat. Padme looks at him, asking Anakin to not go through with this, and to not let fear make his choice for him. Anakin breathes deeply and steps back, not killing Palpatine. Padme steps forward, looking Palpatine in the eye as Windu and the others arrive, arresting Palpatine. Palpatine snarls, attempting to break free and use a final burst of power, but it doesn't work, because the DYAD, acting as one, are using the Force to knock Palpatine out, while also severing Palpatine's connection to the Force. The Jedi would reveal Palpatine as the Sith Lord, showing footage from the fight to the rest of the Senate. The Republic, seeing the indisputable evidence, would believe the Jedi, and they would execute Order 65 in order to have Palpatine officially removed from office. Both Maul and Palpatine would be executed from their crimes against the galaxy, and Dooku would also be executed later on as Bail Organa is elected as the new Chancellor. The Jedi, however, would not see the error of their ways, and Anakin ultimately makes the choice to leave the Jedi Order, especially since some Jedi were planning to sever the DYAD, and having fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One. Padme would give a safe and healthy birth to Luke and Leia, who would be the first students of a new order of Force users created by Anakin and Padme called the Skywalkers, named after their family name and with Anakin at the head. Many Jedi would be attracted to Anakin's order and join, including Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Shaak-Ti, Kit Fisto, and Plo Koon. The galaxy would rebuild. Luke and Leia would become powerful Force users in their own right, and Anakin and Padme would become the most powerful duo of Force users that the galaxy had ever seen. And they would never be separated, not by use of the Force or in any other way. Well, folks, that's our story today. Next week will come What If Ahsoka Turned to the Dark Side Instead of Anakin, so stay tuned for that. Let me know what other what if ideas you have in the comments below. Do leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss a thing. Follow my Instagram at Star Wars Red Wing. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and I'll see y'all later.